Welcome, everybody. Hope you're having a great day today. I'm here with two esteemed and incredible gentlemen.
Mm,
I have Robert B. Davis II and Ryan O'Keefe
mhm.
at
I'm the
this round
first.
table.
Yeah.
We're at a round table, okay? And we're gonna have a little fun. And we're going over Robert B. Davis II's political mantra. I think we're gonna go four parts. And the last episode we did the first three. So before we actually get into things, though, let's do a little introduction. Rob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Ready for this.
Excellent. We're gonna hit the ground running here. If you're curious more about Rob's work, in the link in the description down below, there is access to Rob's Substack as well as his YouTube channel. And of course, if you've been following the channel for quite a while, Rob has been a reoccurring guest, and so I'm sure you are familiar with him. Ryan, this is Ryan's second visit here on this channel. He's gracing us with his presence more and more. And so,
Mm.
Ryan, if you could do us a favor and please kind of reintroduce yourself again for those that were not here prior.
Feel like I'm coming in on a rap song. Let me reintroduce myself. My name is Ryan O'Keefe. I'm a clinical psychologist down here in San Diego, and
Mm,
happy to be here. Very stoked to get to talk with you two gentlemen.
Excellent.
thank you. Thank you very much. All right. And so you're yeah, so we're just gonna jump into this, guys. Do you guys have anything that you wanna tee off here before we jump in?
Go for it.
Excellent, excellent. All right. So as kind of a recap, let's go ahead and actually go over the 15 points here, the 15 political points here. Who would like to start first?
I got it. All
Excellent.
right. So to start off, number one, we all believe in the meaning, significance, and purpose of each individual and of life in general, regardless of purpose-driven claims to the contrary. But life is difficult, including knowing what is right. Anyone who says differently is selling something. Therefore, your doctrine or orthodoxy better include and emphasize understanding and forgiveness, because we are all fallible, both individually and collectively. Freedom of speech is the practical implementation of acknowledging our fallibility. Denying freedom of speech is asserting infallibility. We can all know this, and our hope lies in this because
Humans can understand each other and very often do, even across vast differences, including cultural differences. Our ultimate destiny is together. Therefore, if someone doesn't want to reach the other side, you shouldn't be listening to them. At the same time, you can't read minds and people aren't perfect. And resilience and strength are more valuable than fragility. We all want to be heard, addressed, and counted. So,
We should be active listening when we can and steel manning when we can't, because the winner of the debate may still be wrong. Getting closer to the truth over a longer time is better than producing gotcha moments for short-term wins. We all believe in fairness and justice, though not to the exclusion of all inequality. We all want to go beyond politics and believe in the value of life beyond politics. We all believe there is hope for and value in anyone. And we also all believe there is a limit to usury that will be tolerated.
hmm,
So last time we got through the first three, and we are going to pick up on number four. We are all fallible, both individually and collectively. And my argument for this is there anyone who wants to claim that they are infallible?
Bueller?
Right.
Bueller?
Right. So we all know that we're fallible. So we're fallible. That's what it is. And and I connect this to some other political ideas about what that sort of things that entails, things that can help us realize.
Yeah.
Um, I actually first connect it to one of Jordan Peterson's 12 rules for life. Given that we're all fallible, that means we should be practicing assuming the person you're talking to might know something you don't. I
Mm,
think that's rule 3 or 4 or something like that. Because if I don't know everything and I might be wrong about some things, someone else might know something that I need to know. And then they go on to bring up other things like the difficulty of having a just society full of fallible people, what that looks like, and having to tolerate that, and being doubtful of programs set up by fallible people to remake the world into a perfect utopia. That sort of stuff all sort of follows naturally from accepting our fallibility. So, you guys have any comments on those or related issues?
A couple of things to jump in there, if I may. One is the importance of admitting one's own fallible nature, because that allows permission to fail,
Yeah.
and it allows one's ability to incorporate grace and forgiveness in one's life. If we are on a mindset of perfection, I mean, if you've ever seen somebody exhibit a level of perfectionism in society, I mean, where does that actually go? I mean, does it ever turn out well? I mean, maybe for a short period until burnout, but then what? And so that's like sprinting through life.
Hmm.
It's finding a good jog, or I guess jog, as you say in Santiago,
mm,
in order to properly get a good pace. So you're not burning out. You're having grace for yourself, realizing that you trip, that you can trip over a rock or something and stumble and still, think that you're kind of cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
I associate that whole idea
yeah,
with Winston Churchill saying, "We're just going to muddle through." I think, and I heard in a thing yesterday, one of his phrases was "keep buggering on," like just
okay, no, keep going.
make trip, stumble, get back up, keep going.
hmm
And I think that's, you know, that is kind of the standard, in my opinion. I think that's the standard we should strive to and hold to, rather than, as you're saying, rather than as perfection.
And
hmm
that's where growth lies. That's where, the ability, because you're allowing yourself permission to fail. And so now you can kind of stretch your arms out. It's not like, oh, it's one shot. If you're all putting it down on the line on one shot, you're going to freeze up. But if you're like, I mean, if I miss the shot here, I can just shoot again. It's all right.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're saying, we have a tendency to get caught up in the ramifications of whatever incident that we failed. Okay, so now we're caught up in the shame, we're caught up in the guilt of that failure, right? And so now we're stuck, and so we're apt now to fail more, because now we have failure on our mind, and our attention, our focus is on the fact that we've failed. And so now we're looking in our environment with the RAS, thinking like, oh, let me see more opportunities where I can fail, or let me get more reminders of how I failed in life, rather than incorporating the ability that failure is a part of humanity. And Edison, what he's like, it took me like 1,000 failures until finally the 1,001st was a success to get the light bulb. But it's
Mm-hmm.
getting allowing yourself to fail, and not focusing on it as a failure, but as a stepping point, as a stepping stone to success,
mm,
to wherever it is that you're going. But you have to experience, you have to feel things. The first time you put your hand out, you're probably, not going to grasp whatever it is that you're getting. But it's all in the fact that you reached your hand out to grab it in the first place. And see, now okay, it wasn't there. So maybe if I adjust course a little bit, then I can get a success. And so your mind is focused on the goal rather than the failure. And so as the failures come, as the fallibility comes, as the errors come, uh, we can use that as an ability to adjust course for whatever it is that we're trying to attain in life, as a society or on an individual level.
hmm Yeah, infallibility. Yeah, this I got my only tattoo is of an Enso, which is trying to it's a Zen art of meditation. Rob, you probably know this better than I, but it's trying to paint a perfect circle using a paintbrush. Um, and in the imperfections of that perfect circle lies to at least me, the true beauty of what an enso is. Yet you're always striving for perfection, yet celebrating and being okay with uh, constantly falling short. Or even if you do get it that once, sure, maybe. But zoom out or like just keep going and it's not going to last. And so yeah, just this idea, I think the idea of perfection can be very helpful when related to in the most skillful way. Because it does give us a goal to strive for, and from that goal can it, like, a lot of beauty and value and meaning um, can be experienced. And yet, I know me personally, the reason why, in part, why I got a tattoo. There's a lot of reasons, but in part, it was like a constant reminder, at least growing up, I would always find myself falling short and be really upset with myself about that falling short instead of celebrating and being okay with and being flexible and kind of dancing with, okay, yep, all right, I failed or I didn't quite get it. Let's keep going. And that like joy of falling short and celebrating that, yet continuing to strive for whatever the heck perfect might be. Yeah, it seems to be a really helpful way to live life in my experience thus far. Although you are on that line where it could be incredibly detrimental if you become too rigid one way or the other. Whether it's, oh, I'm like get too lost in the sauce of infallibility, or on the other side, I'm perfect. Like I am not fallible. And the second part of the quote talking about like the collective aspect to it too, the group aspect, that's where things get interesting when we start as a group, we come up with these ideals, whether it's the in my recent studies, it's been the board of psychology and like psychologists in general. Are they infallible? No. um, uh, but yeah, so it's interesting how or why it so often changes when it becomes a group. What is so intoxicating by that? I'm not too sure.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's definitely we need to have a faith in perfection, that perfection exists beyond us and in many ways despite us and abides with us. That's what I would say. But we know, like knowing that and wanting to move towards and have a relationship with perfection and have ideals to strive for it doesn't need to overlap with thinking, therefore, I'm infallible. But you make a good point as well. You don't want to take this truth and say, well, I'm fallible, so therefore I'm just fallible. I kicked my dog today. Hey, I'm a fallible guy. What are you going to do? You don't, that's not just permission to be like, let it all hang loose. Don't worry about your imperfections at all. Don't try to improve. Um, it's not a license to sin, right? It's not, we don't think, if, what is it? Why not sin that grace may abound? Like, so yeah, so that it is that line, and it can swallow you on either side. So, but you guys talked about some really like hopeful and uh, like inspiring ideas. I would just bring it back as well to point two that life is difficult and the difficulty and the fallibility together don't just cause like little annoyances. They cause really, really dark things to deal with, and the going's really tough. One of the things that this is connected to is I read through the Gulag Archipelago after hearing Jordan Peterson
Mm,
sounded off a bunch of times. I finally got around to it, and one of the things that Schulz-Nitzan points out is that the a big reason why no one sort of uh, there wasn't a collective movement to fight back against all the terrible things going on was because no one could report failure. Because the Soviet state believed we are the state, we are the best, we've done it, we've we're got control and we're on the path to perfection.
Yeah.
Therefore, if there's some failure somewhere, if people are starving, that would imply that we aren't perfect, and that can't be because we know we're perfect. And so anytime, like anyone who spoke up against it was considered a traitor to the state. So then no one would speak up against it. So this idea of perfection, if you're committed to it, stops you from registering like, oh, here are things that I need to be addressing and adjusting myself to. So it makes you non-adaptive, the longer you hold on to it, the more you ignore the signs that are telling you, hey, you need to adapt, you need to change.
Hmm.
And it can get really, really, really dark and really difficult. So
Yeah.
um, you want to bring that back to the political realities that we face because, it's not all just like, I gotta hype myself up to keep going to the gym and stuff. It's like we look at a world, whether we whatever points we would argue on what we believe or what we don't believe, most people look out at the world and see things that are not just minor annoyances, that are things that they feel are, um, put them on the brink of despair, at least, and make them um, doubt the existence of any perfection anywhere, as in, what hope is there beyond ourselves and all sorts of things that really are, yeah, on the road to despair. So I think this point is set up in my hope to look at that directly and be useful even in the midst of that.
Hmm.
Think a lot about egregores when we think of the infallibility of of society or something that is abstract, something that is an accumulation of mental energy or thought, like a brand, right? Like it's hard to really to look at the brand of, let's say, Coca-Cola, right, as being something tangible. It's people's collective thoughts of Coca-Cola with all the items out there. And so when you think of the individual as being fallible, it's a little easier because it's almost microscopic. It's very intimate. But when you look at something outside of us, like a nation or as a society or a company that isn't like, you can imagine one person as being the sole arbiter or the person responsible for this, you're less likely to think of it as being fallible. And I think that's why something, and something runs out of speed because like let's say the Roman Empire or the USSR, because people put too much thought into it being infallible, and they didn't individually experience the infallible nature of the group, the nation that they're in. And so everything's fine, hunky dory until it's not. And then
Hmm.
it's not. And so you're not getting those levers, those feels of like, okay, maybe we're not on the right path. I don't, we can feel it right now in our society. But I think that's because, and this will tie into further mantras, but I think that's because we're so interconnected now. It's not
Hmm.
like Bill on his farm and then his neighbor Jim is 3 miles away and it's like now we're at a point to where something happens in Bangladesh and we know about it instantaneously rather than there being little skirmishes happening all throughout the nation and we don't know anything about it because we're not interconnected. But again, that's a little later. But I think that ties into the perspective of a nation or something outside of us, something external, as being infallible because we can only observe it abstractly.
Yeah. Yeah, and that reminds me of just like the older generation. I'm sure that this is a timeless story, but the old generation just being like, well, back in our day, you
Yeah.
could have faith in the party, whatever that party was,
Hmm.
or what the organization, insert
Yeah.
organization's name, news, government, whatever it might be. And one of the experiences that's been happening is like our knowledge of, well, our knowledge and awareness in an objective sort of sense, not necessarily wisdom, but our knowledge and awareness of things going on and perspectives on situations is growing exponentially. And that's all of a sudden like allowing us to see the man behind the curtain. in Wizard of Oz. That's always been there, and like there's always other stuff going on, and that makes it harder to have faith in everything in the same sort of way that folks I think used to be able to, because there's just less information, so you could believe the narrative a lot easier, whatever that narrative was. And there's some definite pros to that. Like
Yeah.
I think it's way less scary if you were just told like, no, it's gonna be okay. We got you. There's safety and security here. That's life is terrifying, and anything can happen, and a lot of terrible things happen and will happen. And so if you can, like that other point about anyone who says differently is selling something, it might not totally be like I think a lot of parents, I'm guessing, would be able to understand this. I understood this like in my various professions of like just wanting to tell someone it's going to be okay and truly meaning it and wanting to like get specific about what's going to be okay. Like you, that can even come from a beautiful place, like a lot of other organizations that may have like gone off the path, may have said at one point or another. Um, so yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah. So there's I think there's a lot of benefits in the interconnectivity too, and being aware of stuff and seeing more behind the curtain and having more knowledge of the fallibility of our collective, uh, whatever they are, collective organizations, collective oversight bodies, all sorts of stuff. The A big difficulty that comes with it, though, is as we become more cynical and more jaded about collective endeavors, well, then what are we supposed to do? Like, if they start to go off the rails, it's like, well, can we fix them? Because if everything we do is fallible, like, how do we fix something that's broken? Like, is there room for any faith in ourselves to actually, even though we're kind of going to screw everything up, is there any faith in ourselves to somehow in that balance of mess up and correction to maintain some sort of beneficent middle ground? And that's a really non-specific thing. Like you can't delineate it. You can't say, here's how we do it. Because as soon as you say, here's how we do it, you're on the line to this is the way and this is our infallible path. And then that's going to go off. So again, it's back to that muddling through, right? We're muddling through and we need to have a faith in this sort of abstract long-term process of swaying back and forth,
Mhm.
rather than a static faith in any particular thing, and that's difficult to do for sure. Um,
If I can add to that, I think that we're in a societal shadow work right now where
Ooh.
we're, we are affirming to ourselves or realizing that Santa Claus isn't real. The big government isn't benevolent. It's not hunky dory. Everything's not gravy. It's like, and that doesn't necessarily mean that. I mean, I think in this situation, it's quite atrocious, but outside of it, it's not the worst thing in the world to understand and appreciate a fallible nature, right? Like when we picture Kim Kardashian, or let's say a royal, and we've talked about this, right? We don't imagine them having bubble guts, right? We don't imagine them in an infallible or in a fallible nature, doing fallible things, being human. Ugh, disgusting human, right? And so when we realize that a lot of these politicians are and leaders, right, that should be exuding the characteristics of morality, of being virtuous, of being integrous, are actually quite degenerate. And so when we realize this stuff, when we're in this information age, when we're in this kind of everybody now gets everything, it's not this cookie cutter level of history that we're getting. We're actually understanding that, okay, wait a minute, maybe things aren't really as we were told they are, and now that people are able to get on YouTube and or do other things, they don't have to jump through the necessary hoops of holding on to a specific ideology that might not necessarily be true, right? Simply because they're doing it for the money as opposed to like, I'm going to be an anthropologist because I love anthropology or, anything down that line. So I think that with this expansion of information, we're understanding that actually everything is quite infallible. And so we can either self-implode, we can destroy ourselves because we realize that, hey, wait a minute, we're human, or we can get ourselves back out of this. We can grow out of this. We can absorb these quote unquote failures or blemishes that we have as humans and grow from it. And what I think of is something very similar to Polymarket on Polymarket, where in last year's election, down to the T, to every House of Rep, every Senate, pretty much by the percentage of which individual is going to win. I mean, they had it down perfectly. And that's just people putting their money where their mouths are in terms of what they believe is going to happen. And that's exactly what happened. And so, I mean, why, if let's say there's a leader that isn't doing well, that is incredibly fallible, why isn't there a streamlined way to get the right people in, like Polymarket, where it's so open, you can just get your opinion heard. You don't have to wait 2, 3, 4 years to get a change done, and then it's never really what we want anyway, right? I mean, this party system, politics, I mean, it's pretty much all the same hand. We're just given the illusion that it's two-sided.
What is
So I would,
polymarking?
Polymarket is essentially it's like an online betting platform,
Mm,
but for essentially anything. You can like, okay, I think that Avatar 3 this December is gonna have like over 200 million domestic box office gross opening weekend.
okay.
And there's a 51% chance that'll happen. And so I can say, okay, maybe it'll happen, maybe it'll not. Or I can say, hey, this athlete is going to drop the ball in the second half of this game,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
score this amount of points or whatever. So
Hmm.
it's very broad.
but people bet on all the elections last time, right?
Okay.
So you're saying.
Interesting.
Um, so I'm gonna challenge that a little bit of like because it could go either way, but like if you're looking at it and saying, well, here's our system and our system's so messed up, look, we have this other way that's clearly so good. I would be skeptical of the new way where it's like, well, if we know how to remake it and we just remake it, like we're fallible in terms of foreseeing all the ins and outs of that. And that's part of the point of this is like I think we should be skeptical of like new ways of completely remaking things so they're all so much better. Now it is good that you're pointing out like this way has been tested in certain ways. Like we should look at how something fares for a while. Um,
It's got to
but
be like I'm sorry, I gotta interject this just because it's on my mind, but there's got like there's got to be pressure felt in that sense, right? Like if let's say Bud Light puts out an ad that people don't like, they feel it in their pocketbooks. People don't buy the product. If Marvel or Star Wars is going in a direction that people don't like, people stop going in. And so they got to face the pressure. Okay, fine. Wait a minute. What's going, and it's pretty quick. I think the soon, and right. It shouldn't be instantaneous foundational change whenever we want because there's just too much chaos. There's got to be a foundational skeleton built in. But I mean, at the same time, if something's not working, I mean, there's got to be pressure felt. If if
yeah,
if a
totally.
company
Yeah.
puts out a product that isn't good and it doesn't sell, so if we elect somebody on the premise of them doing a good job and they just delete, any politician, and they just sit on their hands for 4 years, as opposed to, I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I totally agree that you need to incorporate, you need to have that feedback that's part of growth, right? And ignoring that feedback is part of the infallibility of insulating yourself and trying to just remain as you are and get your way as long as you can. I totally agree with that. Um, I was more saying on the side of like, well, just the impulse of like, well, I see things that are bad. I have an idea. It seems so clear to me that it must be better. So like, why don't we just all get on board? And it's like, well,
Right.
that's a little bit too. Uh, optimistic, right? People need to argue it out for a long time. It needs to be tested out and ironed out before just being like, well, this is the way. This is clearly the new way to do it. Um, unless anyone has more on that, we've spent a long time on number four, so maybe we can move on to number five. Number five is freedom of speech is the practical implementation of acknowledging our fallibility. Denying a freedom of speech is asserting infallibility. So this is actually what we were just talking about of, you know, if I'm not uh, denying freedom of speech gives you that insulation of I don't need the feedback. I don't need to feel the pressure, right? And then uh, allowing freedom of speech is allowing, criticism, right? And so if we're allowing that, then we are saying we need criticism, we are fallible, we need to be able to sort things out and push on each other and move and adjust and take account of things. Whereas if we're saying, nope, you can't have freedom of speech, you can't say these things, you can't object to this, you're limited in these ways, that's saying, well, we know the answer in this case, so no more talk about it, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Not allowing for dissenting opinions and challenging. Yeah. It's and once again, it's a balance of sorts. It's like at the end of the day, you do end up having to make decisions and accepting that what we're gonna do is gonna be not probably not the best thing. And knowing when to make that when to cut your losses and just do it right then. Um, there's definitely something to be said about there is a time and place for that.
Hmm.
And if you just yeah, if you never allow for dissenting opinions, and especially during times of prolonged crises, or at least perceived prolonged crises, someone's just in that state. We don't have time. We don't have
Yeah,
time for, or like it's a threat. If you're perceiving such a big threat on the outside all the time, you may never feel safe enough to be able to be open-minded to other points of view that could be conflicting to your own.
yeah, totally.
And I see that being the case with a lot of the political, I'm going to use a Ryan clinical jargon term, shenanigans that's out there of just like, yeah, it just feels like if anyone offers a counterpoint of view to your average Joe or Jane, they're going to perceive that as like a, a serious threat and get kind of scared about it and immediately counterattack rather than hold space for and explore and figure out how to integrate what could be helpful in a counterpoint.
So that something Stephen had been saying and something you said brought this thing to mind a couple times for me. So I just want to give a shout out to this podcast I just listened to yesterday. It's called The Best Conversation About History You've Ever Heard. It's on trigonometry, and they're hosting Dominic Sandbrook, who's a historian and is on the podcast. The rest is history with Tom Holland. So I highly recommend that to both of you and to anyone.
Wait, Spider-Man?
No, the other Tom Holland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the better
All
Tom
right.
Holland.
The better time.
Anyhow, that a little bit of an aside, but yeah, and that's why point four comes before point five, right? With that's my claim is that the people who are doing that, who are saying, uh, like things are so bad, we need this, and are clinging so tightly to what they think they know, I believe they're enacting and showing that they have this faith in the infallible nature of whatever they've chosen.
Hmm.
And so the point before that is designed to say, okay, let's admit that we're fallible and admit that uh, we need adjustments and whatnot. Now I think there's still a hump to cross of like how do you how do you do that in practice? What does that look like? And I think there might be deeper uh deeper things that enable that in a person. But as best we can, I want, we recognize the fallibility of ourselves, then that should bring us to the space of being much more okay with freedom of speech, right?
Restriction. Somebody tells you that you can't do something, I mean, you kind of want to do it. I mean, unless, like, I mean, if somebody says, hey, fentanyl's bad, I don't really need, like, I can just see somebody, like a picture of somebody doing it, and that's enough for me to know not to do it. But like, in terms of my observations, there's much more upside to being able to say what you want. I mean, sure, some people say some really crazy stuff, but I shouldn't be told that I can't listen to something crazy. I don't need Vince Vaughn and old school to go around and give me earmuffs. I can listen to the crazy cat lady down the corner speaking jargon and nod my head and say, yeah, you know what, that's cool, but like not really, but just to be nice. I don't have to like, you're crazy, or like la 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 la, like sure. We need to be wary of what it is that we're listening to, what it is that we're seeing. We need to protect our eye gates. We need to protect our ear gates. We don't want to overly expose ourselves to things that could seep into us on a subconscious level, like negative affirmations, or we see certain billboards or certain things when we're not really focusing, we're not present, and then it just kind of layers in. So we got to be mindful of that. But that's not like me saying like, you know, burn all the trash cans and like or saying something violent like that's not apt to get people to do that. That's you know I mean, I think there needs to be certain lines, right? Like knowing kind of that people in a large gathering can be in kind of a herd mentality. And if you say certain words, it's known that people in a herd mentality will freak out if you say certain words. And so, fine, just for the benefit of people, you don't want to say certain things that'll get people, in a state of violence, of losing their minds. But if we're saying, like, hey, you can't state a political point or you can't say that you can't do this, that often leads to a vulnerability in that which is saying you can't question. And that like kind of leads, it's like you're not being vulnerable, you're not being authentic. You're saying that I can't listen to something or I can't say something. And that kind of sparks curiosity. And my last point is this is, you know, the ability to say what you want. Like whether or not I agree with it or not, if you look at South Park's recent presentation of Donald Trump, that's like perfect free speech, right? That's like literally saying the emperor has no clothes. Whether you agree with this or not, it's a perfect exercise of freedom of speech. You can laugh at it or not, but you're not going to go to jail, you're not going to lose your head over it. And that's as it should be, right? That's not going to make a whole bunch of people, lose their minds. It's not going to completely erode the fabric of society. And I think that people need to get an understanding of that again within potential differences within one another. We don't want to offend anybody, and so then nothing's funny.
Hmm.
But I have never talked to one person, not a single person, that said that Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder was offensive. But if you think about it, that should be like the most offensive thing in the history of comedy. And that's why we're not having any comedies for things like Tropic Thunder. But who hates who hates Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder, And so it's when you say there's a problem enough times, a problem will be generated. And so if everyone has the ability to have free speech and just say things, it'll just things just naturally balance out. If you have somebody come in and say, you can't say causing a ruckus, that's when things start to rock and that's when you start shaking things up. And that's in this regard, I don't think that's a good thing when we start saying you can't say certain things.
Yeah. And well, yeah, once again, thought-provoking stuff that you guys are saying. But the first thought that I was kind of laughing as you were saying, like, as soon as someone tells me not to do something, you want to do it. I was just taken back to that first backpacking trip with us all, and we're all climbing we're all like, hey, we should stay together because we're out in the middle of nowhere, far away from everything, in the middle of the literally the river of no return wilderness out in Idaho. And we're like all of a sudden like me and Rob are kind of looking around because we're like the two most like experienced like outdoorsmen doing the whole guiding thing. We're like, where's Steven? And then like we're kind of like looking around for Steven, and then like someone spots on another mountain peak, like across a valley, like far away. Steven just like frolicking amongst the boulders on top of this random peak. And we're like, huh, yeah. Like, and so
Way to stick together, a-hole.
yeah. But that was just a yeah, it's like yeah, as soon as you're told like you have to do something, it's like now. And that's yeah, that's an amazing thing to have. But it does kind of bring to mind, I'm thinking of like when is it not okay? Because it's not to say like there's never a time when a dissenting opinion like yeah, I'm kind of curious about that, like pushing us all to be like for us for individually, when would it be like, no, now is not the time. I'm gonna actually inhibit your freedom of speech. Like and I'm realizing like because yeah, intellectually I'm like, oh heck yeah, let's always have freedom of speech. But I'm thinking of times where I'm like, no, this is no longer okay. Or it's like you can say whatever you want to say, but if you do, here are going to be the consequences that I'm gonna that are going to happen. I'm thinking about this in terms of like, yeah, yeah, like it can be like everywhere. Whether it's like as a therapist, if someone tells me that they're gonna commit suicide, like they have that right to tell me whatever they want to tell me, and here are the consequences that I'm like required by law to uphold. So that's like therapy. But also, if you're in a bar and you go up to someone and you say something crazy about their girlfriend while they're playing pool, and it's a gnarly part of town, you can say that. America, yay. Also, you might get stabbed or punched. Um, who knows? So that it's this interesting, like we do have freedom of speech, and yet that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't going to be consequences to our words, nor that yeah, there should be consequences to our
Mhm.
words.
Yeah, yeah, that gets really really intricate and interesting. And I'm not sure it's something that we could actually delineate and say like this is what it should look like. And I think it will be again more that muddling through of just people kind of figuring it out. That's actually something I wanted to talk about. So
Hmm.
the
If I,
last
I'm sorry, if I could before we move on, something that just popped in my mind if we're talking about freedom of speech, like I think of the integration of artificial intelligence like ChatGPT, Perplexity, all of these models, and like even in South Park, I mean, it actually did, South Park did it. It's well, ChatGPT told me that I need to divorce you now,
hmm,
and so like who's saying that ChatGPT who's you I know there's
yeah.
some restrictions on politics, but when in regards of like just giving people practical advice, like where is that really coming from? Who's regulating that? Like
Yeah.
how is and I guess you can tweak it a little bit, but again, if we're regulating everybody's tweet on social media, where's any additional regulation on things that we can't necessarily control?
Yeah, that's another crazy layer that's coming in. Um, so that's like the last point I had written down here on point five that we're talking about. I said something we'll have to grapple with moving forward is how much freedom of speech must be a personal and cultural value, not just a government mandate in situations over which the government has purview. And just like Ryan, the example he brought up was something that's I've been thinking about a while. It's kind of a weird example, but there's a there
Let's go.
was there's an artist, a musical artist. I would classify him as like gimmick country music, Trace Adkins,
Hmm.
and he has this song called "Fighting Words," and it's all about how, like it's a bar thing, right? If you say something about my flag, my God, or my mama, we're gonna fight. And there's a part, I think it's at the end where he has like he's just like talking and he says, First Amendment, First Amendment protects you from the government. And he's like, "Right, right, right, tough, tough, tough." And like it's silly to be philosophical about Trace Adkins. He makes that clear in his songs. But uh whatever, I'm gonna do it anyways. Uh that song annoys the crap out of me because he opens up, he's like, I'd walk way out of my way. I'm not a fighter. I avoid fights all I can. It's like, well, if you have particular trigger words that you're telling other people that you're gonna like, then you're not someone who doesn't want to fight. Like
Hmm.
that means you are someone who wants to fight. So that's just a load of baloney. And and like I love the flag, I love America. Well, the First Amendment is pretty dang American. And saying that, oh, that's just for the government. You're just protected from the government. It's like, no, it's a principle. And actually, the government is here to protect me from getting beat up by you because assault is illegal.
Hmm.
So, like,
Hmm.
there's a huge contradiction there of like, I'm going to punch you because you criticized the flag or said something about the flag, um, because I love America so much. But that's not the ideal of America. So, but as much as that annoys me, like you said, Ryan, I don't think there should be no consequences to our words, and there are things that we should value. Also, jumping back, the point is even stronger with my God, because clearly he's invoking Christianity and like people who say God will not be mocked. Like, yes, that's a quote from the Bible, but in the Bible, God was literally mocked. He came down to earth and endured our mocking for love for us and calls us to do the same. So you know, anyways, there's a proper application of that and an improper application of that. But to be like, I'm going to fight you because you criticize Christianity, it's like, well, that's not very Christian, actually, very clearly so. And so, anyhow, I think we get quickly into problems when people are saying, well, this is so important to me that even though, yes, you can criticize it, I'm going to make sure there's consequences for it.
Hmm.
At the same time, there shouldn't be no consequences for words. And then there's the problem of the workplace of like, well, yes, you have freedom of speech, but you were screaming at the customer and telling them that they're an evil capitalist while you're selling them coffee. And now they're not coming back. So you're fired because obviously so. Um, so yeah, I don't have like I don't have a systematic answer, an outline of like this is how it should be. I see the problems that are going on and I'm commenting on them, and I that's what I've got.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's well, and I wonder if that's part of it. It's like your words are okay, but the way that how you communicate them, like the ideas behind the words. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm thinking about how in certain times, like in my life, when I've been coming at like I've been curious about certain ideas, but in the very act of trying to seek out answers and clarifications on someone else's points of view, I've felt at least shut down by exploring their ideologies, and not just like taking whatever they're saying at face value and agreeing with it.
Hmm.
Um, and being thought of as like an opponent to it. Even when I'm like, no, we might be, I'm guessing there's somewhere where we have common ground, and I would love to like explore that so that I can then understand a little bit more where you're coming from. Um, yeah, and I felt that on every side of the political spectrum at times. Like no two people have the exact same views about everything. And so yeah, it's interesting when I felt like I couldn't even ask questions about people's experiences or thoughts and viewpoints or institutions. Um, values and whatnot.
There's gotta be like that middle ground, right? Like if somebody if somebody identifies as a paperclip, or if somebody thinks that a paperclip is a house, right? Like they can shape that paperclip into the shape of a house, but it's not a house. You can't live in it. And so, if there are people that identify as certain things, or that embody certain things, right? Like on one end of the spectrum, there's like the Salem witch trials. If you don't agree with us, we're gonna literally end your life. On the other end of the token is, well, maybe we don't want to end people that identify as paperclips or that think that paperclips are houses, but we don't want to really go along that line of thinking. We don't want to put that in our textbooks. We don't want to teach our kids this stuff. And we don't want to really move society along in this direction, because essentially it's an illusion, right? And so we don't want to really promote that. We don't want to say, "Hey, wait a minute. If you're saying crazy things, I'm not going to say you can't say crazy things, but I'm not going to incorporate crazy things into the society." So where's that, right? Where's that sweet spot where, you know, there's that societal cohesion, there's that societal backbone where we all agree on certain things. Fine. Of course, you're not a paperclip, you're a human being. But I'm not going to stop you from identifying as a paperclip if that's what you want to do. But don't tell my kid that he's a paperclip, because he's not. He's a human. And so where's that line of letting people think that they can be paperclips, but not telling my kids that they're paperclips, if that makes any sense?
No, yeah, yeah, definitely.
Well, and like there, I'd be curious what the heck they're talking about. Like, what do you mean by paperclip? For you, like, and
Any
also like on the other side, what do you mean by human being? What the heck are one of those? There's a great comedian that I follow, Tony something or other, um, Alva something. But he makes little shorts and stuff, and he was talking about like when a computer asks you like to prove that you're a human. And he's like, well, to first prove that I'm a human, we must first define what a human being is. And ethereal music starts playing, and he talks about this beautiful philosophical, like, I guess I don't know, but technically, like, it's someone that knows his own mortality and wants to, like, create something immortal that goes beyond his own life and all this beautiful stuff. And it's like deep. And I'm like, wow. And then the computer's like, no, I just want you to put this puzzle piece and slide it, and then tell me how many motorcycles there are. Like that's what it means to be human. It's like, wait, what? Um, so I am curious, like what I think. I personally both know I have an idea of what a paperclip is, what a human being is. But I think that it would be helpful to talk about these things, but also like what you're saying, there might be a point where it could be actually detrimental to question certain things, like at a certain level or at a certain time and place, developmentally speaking, it is healthy for us to start having more solidified understandings of things, yet keep them flexible. And I think we're starting to, as a society, experiment with and question that, although I'm sure it's been happening for a long time. But like especially right now, it's especially plastic. The and we're all kind of questioning it. And these very basic things like what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? Um, are a human being. They are being questioned. But I guess I'll push back a little bit of like when I don't think personally it's always detrimental to question that, but rather like how does that conversation take place now that the question has been asked and there's a reason why it's grabbed so many people's attention, I think. I think there's some validity behind the questioning of things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people are confused, right?
Befuddled.
Whatever side we're on,
Hmm.
I feel like we could agree that people are confused. And I don't think it's a good, reliable, like effective tactic to say, well, we're confused. Ah, the solution to that is here's here's the answer, accept it, stop questioning,
Mhm.
right? Like that's valid. I heard Steven saying like he's going to let people do what they want, but draws a line in terms of you don't get to bring up this weird, vast quandary with kids, right? Or
Mhm.
at least with my kids, right? And then there's a question about how that applies in public schools where different parents have different views and whatnot. But um, yeah, I mean, I, I'm on board with, I'm on board with uh, trying to help people. But Stephen, you also mentioned like societal cohesion, and that's back to the first point is like there we could see benefits to societal cohesion because we can see that we're not cohesive right now and there's problems going on. But how do we get there? Do we get there by commanding a just no longer questioning these things, or can we use questions and conversations and openness to move towards something like healing and understanding? And that sounds like a really tall order, especially considering all we've talked about so far of life being difficult, us being fallible and whatnot. Personally, I think the dividing line there is faith. I think if you believe that there's an order and structure to goodness and life that's there beyond us, then that makes then there opens the possibility for that healing, for real healing. If you believe that everything's just a haphazard chaos nonsense and we have some ideas, but all of them are pretty much wrong in some ways and we'll never agree on anything, then yeah, we're never going to have societal cohesion. So I think there's deeper issues under that need to be uh, addressed and solved to move in that direction. And I think questioning is a big part of that. Stephen and I did a podcast, and I have a clip from it that I posted called Repentance and Redemption Are the Foundations of Tolerance. And I think that point of view of like allowing people to have those questions to and entering into it with them, there's a purpose to that. There's a point. And the point is not simply to allow them to dissolve and define anything as anything and be lost in a infinite sea of chaos. The
Mhm.
point of entering into questioning is to seek that true healing, that truth which does exist, and help them find that as a partnership and as taking their experience of meaning. Point one, everyone believes in me. Like people are confused and disturbed by these ideas because they actually are having a meaningful experience of being confused and not knowing what a human being is. And and the questions are coming up as meaningful to them.
Mhm.
So we should treat them as meaningful. We should have well, there should be some people who have the capacity and are doing that outreach and are helping people through those. Um, at the same time, I think it's a mistake to be like, well, everybody has to always be open all the time, and uh, because that's a compassionate thing to do is to have, not everybody has the time or the space to entertain anything and everything at all times. And so again, that's back to the difficulty, the fallibility of the world, and it all rolls back around. And yep, it's difficult.
I think it always shifts, right? Like what Ryan was saying, like what is like words, we're trying to describe the existence through the word of human being. It's just, oh, social security number, beep, bop, boop, boop, boop. Your name is this, and you're, these classifications. But that's not tangible. Not even this table that my computer is on is not solid, right? I say it's solid because I'm experiencing it as being solid. I can't put my fist through it. But if you're a scientist, and you say you can look at this and say, no, actually, it's an amalgamation of atoms, of molecules and particles that are vibrating in unison, but they're not really close together when you get down on their level. There's vast distances. Even with us, there's so much stuff going through us at any given point, that we can't see, we can't feel, we can't experience. therefore we don't think it's there. We view
Right now,
ourselves
it's coffee that's going through me. Actually, I
coffee.
do feel that.
Could be coffee,
Feel that in a big way.
it's passing through us. So, finding a baseline of what is solid, what is tangible, what is cohesive can be difficult at times. And I don't think it's going back. I feel like there's, a reversion in cohesion behind, let's say, indoctrination. We are all going to do this because this is what we're supposed to do. And this is, just get in line, don't ask questions. Okay. Rather than let's all stretch out and realize, okay, you know, toilets are for pooping, trash cans are not for pooping. We can all agree on that. There's a small percentage that might disagree, but you know, through societal cohesion, we can hopefully, I don't know, get them to not do it, to
Hmm.
some extent, maybe through whatever means, through shaming them,
Hmm.
through putting them in jail, but that behavior should be stopped because it's
Mhm.
detrimental to the progression of society. It's disgusting and it shouldn't be tolerated, in my opinion. I don't think
Yeah.
it should be tolerated. And so, various things like that as society, as the cohesion shifts over time,
Hmm.
and now that we're in this information age, we can't just sell each other a bunch of snake oil and be ignorant. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of ignorance and there's a lot of snake oil being sold around here, but it's a little different now because now there's different checks. We can ask different people their opinions. We can, go over here and check, so um I think that the what I'm trying to say to wrap that up is that cohesion isn't necessarily tangible throughout time, throughout history. It's it fluctuates within a parameter, within a specific parameter. We're no longer having to sacrifice animals to appease gods. It's not like an everyday thing. It used to be, and so, there's just a shift in things and gradual shift. And it's identifying these slow, gradual shifts, whether or not they're good for us or not. Because many times it's the detrimental shifts that come in real slow that we don't really pay attention to, that we can't see. Rather than, we're shut down for 5 months or a year during COVID, and then we all go outside and there's like all these 5G towers going on. We're like, where do these come from? They all popped up out of nowhere. That was really quick. We all should have noticed that really quick, but that wasn't a gradual one.
So I think that if we can move on to six, that'll tie right in here. Um, this is kind of the counterbalance to what we've been talking about of seeing all the chaos and, well, how do we, how do we draw a line when all questions from some extent are valid, right? They're coming from a meaningful experience. Um, Point six is humans can understand each other and very often do, even across vast differences. And this is a could be a contentious point today, but I think similar to other things, there's a pretty quick refutation of it. If you believe that people cannot understand each other, then there's no point saying that people can't understand each other. Then again, that's just okay, we're in despair. We're there's no hope, right? But regardless of what people will say to the contrary, and there are complications there, it's absolutely difficult to understand people, understand each other. But we nevertheless achieve significant levels of understanding quite often.
Yeah, it can be done.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and it's always something that I find to be helpful when I don't think I could understand someone. Um, when I put them as that alien from me, that's
Mhm.
usually some of the most like helpful areas of like growth and meaning I've ever had. So when I go to those places and interact with those people, um, it's been incredibly helpful for my life. Um, yeah, yeah, because there's a cost to keeping that, like being unwilling to uh, span that distance myself. Not to
Mhm.
say like they will all the time. or even that I will. Like there's times where I'm like, no, I just need people I do understand around me. I need some of the dudes that want to just surf and have a good time. But like sometimes when I'm in a good enough place, I'm able to go to those like places that I consider dark and alien to me and uncomfortable and even dangerous, interacting with certain people that I may have like demonized. And and yeah, it can be very helpful. Yet there is, yeah, like I was kind of saying, like you need to be in a good place, or at least I've found that I need to be in a good place if I'm going to try and understand someone like that. What do y'all think about that?
I'd say just quickly that last point of being in a good place. That's why, as I was saying before on our last point, like that's why you can't just have everybody, free for all questioning at all times. You can never draw a line, never have a boundary. It's because actually this takes proper preparation and energy and mindset. And we are also struggling in ourselves. And like, we're not, it's not just, you know, there are some people out there who need healing, everybody else all the time therapist, right? Therapists need to not be therapists sometimes. They need a break. They need their own therapist.
Hmm.
Like we can't just expect everybody to always be the perfect understanding being
Hmm.
that holds the I hate that phrase by the way, but holds the space for people. I'll use it because it made sense in that scenario. Uh, People don't have infinite space to hold space all the time,
Mm-mm.
whatever that may or may not mean. So that's I just see the connection to what we already went over.
Hmm. Are you understanding what's going on, Stephen? Can you understand?
Just floating around, floating around. You know, I think of, there's got to be differences. There can't, like, there's cohesion. There's got to be individuality. There's got to be, I'm a proponent, and this is potentially controversial, but I'm a proponent for diversity, for nation states, for differences between people, not in the sense of like everybody's you know against each other, but everyone's unique, and we shouldn't be forging to be like what was it in Star Trek, the Borg, or like the Hive. Everyone's, there's got to be flair. You should be able, ideally when I think of a unified world, we're essentially we're there, and this is what's crazy is we feel like things are breaking down, but if you want to fly to Japan and have some sushi in Japan, you could do it. You got to have a little money, but you could do it, and you could be received well in Japan as anybody. You can go anywhere. Fine, certain spots maybe you can't go, but again, do you really want to go walk around in like Chicago at night? But that's our backyard, and so you know it's what things are we a part of? What things do we say is not a part of us? And again, that shifts. If I'm in a good mood, if I just had a nice bowl of ice cream, I might be more inclined to listen to somebody's opinion that I might disagree with, and then I might agree.
Hmm.
And so again, the stuff isn't necessarily tangible, but there's a play on emotions, right? Like even words. Like when we think of, people that have the signs out like, there's no hate here. Hate doesn't belong here. It's like, well, I wasn't even thinking about the word hate until I saw your sign in the front yard. And so is there's like a projection of some sort, and so a lot of it too is getting into an idea or an understanding of just in non-judgment. Like I mean, I know this conversation is all over the place, in the extent of politics and kind of society and even spirituality. But I'm saying like I think a lot of it has to do with non-judgment. You go around your life doing the best that you can, being the best you, and of course have your ear to the tracks in terms of making sure that things don't get too crazy. But if we're externalizing everything and thinking that, oh, this guy's different than this and this, it's a lot of mental energy being expended.
Hmm.
I
You know,
think I think when you say non-judgment, you mean like non-ultimate condemnation, right? Like openness to the other person's divinity and that their path, no matter what it looks like to you, can lead to salvation, right? Not necessarily like not having an opinion about things, not making specific judgments in your life, right? Yeah, just wanted to clarify that. And that ties into the video clip I was talking about before, where repentance and redemption are the purpose of tolerance. But I think we're kind of close to closing. And just for this point, number six, I'll bring up a controversial point and you guys
Oh,
can comment on it as you see fit.
wrong.
Um,
Go ahead. Sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
okay. Good job.
Sorry.
Uh, Humans can understand each other and very often do, even across vast differences. I would say there's proof of this. The proof of this is Christianity, is the Bible. And I know a lot of people would be like, ah, blah, 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 Crusades. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like, yes, yes, Inquisition. Like, yes, problems. But at the same time, this is a conception, an idea, a story that started in like this weird Middle Eastern community of segregated people from the rest of the world, and then started blossoming through these like backwoods, again, Middle Eastern fishermen. And nowadays we associate Christian people in the United States associate Christianity with white people. Like, well, white people didn't write the Bible. And so there has been this worldwide spread of this story that we agree on across cultures. And the point of it is actually to find that agreement across cultures. That's what it tells you to do. Mm. And you could use other religions as well. Islam has spread across many different cultures, and people find meaning in it and find truth in it and agree on it on many ways. And same thing with Buddhism. In any large religion that has that expansionist element to it is by definition seeking to impart what they believe as truth and meaning across those boundaries. And and yeah, I mean, it's been going on for millennia. And yes, there have been difficulties and wars and atrocities that happen intermingled in there, but I think we can focus on that too much and not look at just the plain reality that like I could literally have a theological conversation with someone from Ethiopia and be in agreement with them, or someone from China who's a Christian,
Mhm,
Mongolia, right?
mhm,
We could all relate, and I like talking about Buddhism, so I could relate my own theological concerns that I think are best expressed through Christianity, but I can pretty well have a conversation with any Buddhist um, across the world, and I think we're looking for the same things.
mhm.
I think there's a harmony of the meaning there, and so I feel like there are so many instances we sort of are drawn to the difficulties, to the conflicts today, and we focus on those, and those are there. I'm not denying them, and life is difficult. But I think if we can take a step back from those for a moment, we can also see that very much just absolutely clearly the case that people very often understand each other, and we have common experiences across vast differences.
Yeah. What stands out to me here is that, um, like just going through life, I'll remember, well, like of the experiences that I've had over the last 5 years, some of the easiest to remember are like the tragedies and the conflicts. And I, for some reason, don't remember to the same extent all of the just a random stranger doing something nice for me or just saying, "How are you doing?" And actually caring about what's going on, or someone helping me with this or that, get to the airport. Well, like all the small things that have happened, all the conversations I've had with people from all over the world when I'm out doing my various outdoor recreational shenanigans, or just like walking the street. So yeah, it's I think your words here of like it often happens. There's also a ton of religious people that are just like super nice and chill and will go out of their way to like relate and help everyone out. And also there are people that can pretty accurately be described as acting monstrously and terribly, and people in positions of power have done, yeah, absolutely horrible things. I think you're absolutely right. And yet that doesn't mean that oftentimes, and the reason why we overlook it is because it is off, it's the norm.
Yeah.
It doesn't stand out. It's kind of a bummer. That it really doesn't, we don't attach so much significance to like, holy crap. That's what I really love. I don't know about y'all, but I guess I just don't watch movies as much anymore as an adult. But as a kid, it always meant so much to me to see people from different ethnic or racial or like belief identity. Like, remember the Titans? Like movies like that always like they get me so fired up. And and yeah, like and stories like that happen all the time, all over the place. And yeah, I think that they might even be growing in their frequency. I'll say as much as like all the terrible things might even be increasing as well. It seems like more and more people, at least in my circles, are experiencing these coming together sort of moments.
Excellent. All right. Do we have any more additional points that we want to make before we conclude this week's episode?
On a very, very manly and masculine note, I'll just say that Ryan's point there ties in very beautifully with the message and the ending of the movie Love Actually. So
Mm, mm,
there you go.
amen. And one other point that I was just gonna say was like, I find I've been this thought has kept occurring to me as we've been talking about the infallibility of everything that we say. A big part of the reason why I've never done these like recordings that would go out to public is out of fear and understanding of all of my words are imperfect. All my thoughts are not fully thought out and as well said as they could be, or as like yeah, as like holding divine truth or just ultimate truth in them. I I'm I'm very grateful to also be invited into these conversations with two other men that are brave enough to like embrace their infallibility and risks saying unfinished thoughts and working together to yeah strive for perfection, but being cool with not hitting it. And I just want to say like I'm very aware of not saying everything perfectly throughout this, and I appreciate you guys holding space for that, especially you, Rob, with your holding
You're
space skills.
welcome. Happy to do it.
So yeah, I get a lot of brain farts, and you got to just be open to experiencing them, just passing the brain gas.
Passing the brain gas.
That's
That's a
it.
therapy poster that's going up on the wall.
Guy climbing a mountain with that under the description. All righty, brother. So here we go. End of episode 2 of this discussion on the political mantra with Robert B. Davis and Ryan O'Keefe. We just went through points 4, 5, and 6. And so I'm assuming next week we're going to go through 7, 8, and 9. Uh, Maybe even a little more. Who knows? We might get a little extreme depending on if we have some extra coffee beforehand or not.
Mm,
We'll see. But either way, everybody, check the links in the description down below. Again, there is a link for Rob's Substack as well as his YouTube channel, and there is a link for the Sons of God Discord community down in the description as well below. Thank you very much for watching. God bless, and may peace be with you.